The first of Donald Trump's cabinet picks to be confirmed, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, has been sworn into office. One of Rubio's first appointments was to meet with counterparts from the Quad allies, Japan, India, and Australia, all countries that are also worried about China's rising power. Earlier, speaking to State Department employees, Rubio said the new administration's foreign policy would be focused on advancing U.S. national interests. Earlier, I spoke to Manuel Roig-Franzia. He is a writer and author of the book Rise of Marco Rubio, a biography of the Florida senator and former Republican candidate. I asked him whether Rubio, who has been well known as a senator for years, how do we know what kind of Secretary of State he will be?
I would expect that you're going to have a Secretary of State who's going to work very quickly to send the message that he is the Secretary of State for the United States, but also specifically the Secretary of State for the Trump administration. If you listen to his remarks today, he repeatedly said, I have been put here by Donald Trump. I'm put here by Donald Trump to enact his foreign policy. So I would not expect him to be the sort of Secretary of State who will be saying things that seem to be out of sync with the president who he serves.
Rubio has talked about an America First foreign policy, playing off the America First policy of Donald Trump. What does that mean? Hasn't American foreign policy always been about America First?
Well, I think what you're talking about there is this notion that the American right has tended to feel that the United States has been too willing to spend money and to focus on the needs of other countries, and that the shift that he will be helping to push forward is the notion that each of the decisions that they make will be clearly focused on the United States and its interests. And of course, this will come into play, I think, very soon with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. As I'm sure you've seen in remarks that both President Trump and Secretary Rubio have been making, they're very interested in getting that conflict resolved and moving on to a situation in which the U.S. can dictate in a greater way what's occurring in that part of the world.
So you mentioned that conflict, that war. There's multiple others going on. Do we have any indication what his first priorities are going to be as new Secretary of State?
I think that remains to be seen. I would say, obviously, ending the war in the Middle East will also be at the top of the agenda. But I would throw out something else. If you've listened to his confirmation hearing and if you listen to his remarks leading up to that, he's spoken a great deal about China and the threat that China poses for the United States. And obviously, a very significant issue that will be dealt with in the first months of the Trump administration is what to do about TikTok, the very popular video social media platform. And I would expect him to be very involved in that. There's one interesting little twist here, and that is that Marco Rubio has been a very stern critic of China, and he's actually banned from entering the country. It'll be interesting to see whether China decides that now that he is America's top diplomat, to get rid of what was actually a very symbolic ban.
Okay, so Marco Rubio hoping for diplomatic immunity on his first days on the job. Manuel Roig-Franzia, writer and author, many thanks.
Great to be with you.
Well, joining me now is Julius von der Laar. Julius was a member of Barack Obama's campaign back in 2008 and 2012. Julius is now a political campaign advisor right here in Germany, and he joins us tonight from here in Berlin. Julius, it's good to have you back on the show. We saw the inauguration yesterday of President Trump 2.0. I just would like to hear your thoughts on this second Trump presidency.
Well, I mean, let's start with the inaugural speech. I thought it was a continuation of the campaign rhetoric that we've heard over the last 2 years. He talked about all the things, the migration crisis. He talked about the need for America to come back. It was ultimately the Make America Great Again speech that he had been giving for 2 years. And the interesting thing was that, of course, he was saying that America is being ripped off, that people were treated horribly, unfairly. And all of a sudden, while Joe Biden was sitting right next to him. So it wasn't the address that some had expected of unity, of people coming together, the country being united. It was the Trump MAGA speech, and I think it was pretty effective, at least for half the country.
Julius, you know what it's like when a candidate moves from campaigning to governing. There's a serious learning curve in the first term, especially when you go to the White House. But when the second term begins, the initial barriers, they are no longer a factor. What does this mean for the Trump administration this time around?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, Trump doesn't have to consider anything politically anymore when it comes to re-election. He knows this is his final term, and he is basically unshackled. He can just basically move forward however he plans to. And I think we saw that yesterday. Right after the inaugural address, he went over and signed executive order after an executive order. And also, I think it shows, given the fact that he surrendered himself by a group of individuals from the business side, but also his new cabinet of folks who are basically 100% loyal and at his side. So I think it shows that Trump comes and plans to do business, most importantly, to get his agenda passed.
For the first time in U.S. history, foreign leaders were invited to a presidential inauguration on Monday. And this is definitely a break with tradition. That said, there was only one European political leader at Trump's inauguration. That was Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. Was that meant to send Europe a signal? And if so, what is the message, do you think?
I think the signal that we all saw and most importantly heard was that Donald Trump says it is America first. When I see the discussion around the Panama Canal, when he said we're being ripped off, we're being treated very unfairly, he didn't enact any of the tariffs that he had promised during the campaign, at least not on day one. But I think it is clear that Trump at least has him in the back of his hand. So I think it was a strong message towards Europe. Also, given the press conference that he did 2 weeks ago, where he said, look, you have to do more. Not just only when it comes to NATO, but especially when it comes to trade. So I think the message was heard in Berlin and in capitals all across Europe that, it is not the transatlantic partnership that we saw under Joe Biden.
Trump began his second term by taking the U.S. out of the World Health Organization, taking the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord, just to name a few. I'd like to get your thoughts on Trump's impact on European politics. Yesterday, Trump announced that he is shutting down the Green Deal in the U.S. I want you to take a listen to what the Prime Minister of Belgium said today in Davos at the World Economic Forum about that. Take a listen.
I think as Europeans, we should definitely stick to the goal. So what we have in the Green Deal, we agreed to it. We should stick to it from a climate perspective, but also from a competitiveness perspective, we should stick to it. What we should change is be clear on the goal, but more open on the ways to achieve it.
So if I understand him correctly, Julius, Donald Trump is not having that great of an impact here. Is that what you're hearing from the political players that you talk with?
Well, consider that we're also in the middle of an election campaign right here in Germany with basically 30 days to go. And exactly what we just heard is the rhetoric that's being displayed in the German election campaign by some of the politicians saying, well, why should we move ahead with the clear climate goals if, one, the United States or China is not adhering to them anymore? Or should we be at the forefront of actually achieving all those goals? Or should we maybe turn them down just a little bit as well? So I think it does have an impact. But most importantly, Europe is not speaking with one voice. And I think this is what is required of Europe if we want to have any sort of impact in global politics. We got to stand together. And I think the matter of the fact is that there is Giorgia Meloni in Italy. We've got, of course, Viktor Orban. We've got Robert Fico. We've got an election campaign that's going to take place in France and, of course, Germany as well. So I don't think, looking at Europe, we're anything close to united. More importantly, we're more divided than ever.
Trump's new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he was sworn in today. Take a listen to what he said, then we're going to talk about it.
President Trump's made it very clear, everything we do, and this is true in government, but especially at the Department of State, everything we do must be justified by the answer to one of three questions. Does it make us stronger? Does it make us safer? And does it make us more prosperous? If it doesn't do one of those three things, we will not do it.
So, Julius, is this a new approach to U.S. foreign policy? I mean, European governments have heard this before in various iterations from Democratic and Republican presidents, haven't they?
I mean, I think this is the basic task of any government to make sure that, the own position, the own country is strengthened. So it might be rhetorically a nuanced position compared to what Barack Obama would say. But in the end, it is America first. And that is what Marco Rubio is articulating. Look, the question is also, what role does Marco Rubio actually play when it comes to governing? Is foreign policy being run exclusively through the White House and Marco Rubio is being sent on a private jet to capitals all across the globe? Or does he actually have any sort of impact? My understanding is that it is Donald Trump who's calling the shots and that basically everyone else is sort of going out and fulfilling the duties that are asked from Donald Trump.
Interesting you say that, because ahead of the start of the second Trump administration, another man has attracted a lot of attention, the world's richest man, Elon Musk. Now, we know that he'll be heading the new Department of Government Efficiency for President Trump. Right. But here in Europe, it is how Musk has used his platform X to voice his opinions about UK and German politics. He has said, for example, that the far-right AfD party is the only party to save Germany in next month's national election. He's called for German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to resign. With all of that in mind, I want you to take a listen to what German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said today at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
We have the freedom of speech in Europe, and in Germany everyone can say what he wants, even if he is a billionaire. And what we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions. And that is what I would like to repeat again.
So, Julius, help us understand what the German Chancellor is saying there. First Amendment freedom of speech, as we know it in the U.S., is not the same as freedom of expression here in Germany, right?
Brent, you asked me a question that I cannot answer. I don't know exactly what he said. He says, of course, at the one hand, anyone can say whatever they want to, but you can't say extreme things and we will not tolerate it. What does it mean to not actually tolerate it? Is he going to actually, go on to say there's some limitations, what X can do and what Elon Musk can do? Now, we can talk about the merits of what, Elon Musk says and how it impacts foreign elections. And I think we should have that discussion. Mm-hmm. But again, Olaf Scholz has the opportunity to use this, especially when it comes to the German election campaign. But I don't think anyone clearly goes out and knows what Olaf Scholz just said.
Let me ask you then, before we run out of time, you are a campaign strategist. How much of an impact can Elon Musk really have on this upcoming German election? I mean, is he the big wild card here?
Well, I think he can be an X factor. Looking back at the U.S. election, he donated $250 million to Donald Trump. I don't think he's going to donate $250 million in this European or German election. But again, he controls the platform. He controls the rails. So I think there is an impact to be had in the conversation that he had with Alice Weidel. I don't think it got great reach on X alone. But given the fact that everyone else, including us, were talking about it, of course, it gave it a tremendous reach. So there is an impact to be had by Elon Musk on this election campaign.
Yeah, that's right. Alice Weidel, of course, the chancellor candidate for the far-right AfD party. Yeah. Well, we will see what happens next month on Election Day here in Germany. Julius von der Laar. Julius, it's always good to talk with you. We appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Good seeing you, Brent. Thank you.